Paragraph 1, English story with English subtitles. Paragraph 2, selected idioms and slang with definitions and example sentences.
John and his wife had found an old mansion to rent for the summer. It was a grand, colonial house, standing alone far from the village, surrounded by gardens and tall hedges. The house had been empty for years, and they rented it for a surprisingly low price. His wife found this strange, but John, being a practical man, dismissed her worries. He was a doctor and did not believe in ghosts or superstitions. He also did not believe his wife was truly sick. He said she only had nervous troubles and needed rest. John made all the decisions, including which room they would stay in. His wife wanted a cozy room downstairs, but he insisted on the large nursery at the top of the house. It had many windows, letting in fresh air and sunshine. However, the walls were covered in a terrible yellow wallpaper. Its pattern twisted and turned in confusing ways, making her feel dizzy when she stared at it for too long. She hated it, but John told her it was silly to let something so small bother her. She was forbidden from writing or doing any work. John and his sister, Jenny, believed too much thinking would make her condition worse. Still, she secretly wrote in a journal when no one was watching. She longed for company and activity, but John told her to rest. He assured her that she was getting better, even when she felt weaker each day. As the days passed, she became obsessed with the wallpaper. She saw strange shapes in the patterns. At first, they seemed like shadows, but over time, she saw the figure of a woman trapped behind the paper. She watched the woman move at night, creeping behind the pattern, trying to break free. She began to believe that the woman was real. Her mind grew more restless. She started seeing creeping women outside in the garden and along the road. She felt as if the house itself was keeping her locked away. She stopped sleeping at night, choosing instead to watch the wallpaper, waiting for the woman to move. During the day, she tried to tear the paper off the walls, desperate to set the woman free. One night, John was away, and she worked harder than ever, pulling and peeling the wallpaper. By morning, much of it was gone. She felt triumphant, as if she had finally escaped. When John returned, he found the door locked. He pounded on it, shouting her name. Finally, she told him where to find the key. When John opened the door, he stood frozen in shock. His wife was crawling around the room, following the path she had made along the wall. She looked at him with wild eyes and whispered, "I've got out at last, in spite of you. And I've pulled off the paper so you can't put me back." John fainted, falling right in her path. She simply kept crawling, creeping over him each time she went around the room.
Far from the village. A meaning. A place that is isolated or distant from the main area of activity. Example. The cabin was far from the village, making it the perfect place for a quiet retreat. Not believe in ghosts or superstitions. A meaning. To be skeptical and not accept things that have no scientific proof. Example. Tom doesn't believe in ghosts or superstitions, but he still avoids walking under ladders. Make all the decisions. Meaning. To be in control and decide everything. Example. In their relationship, Lisa makes all the decisions while Jake just goes along with them. It made her feel dizzy. A meaning. To confuse or overwhelm someone mentally or physically. Example. Trying to solve that complicated math problem made her feel dizzy. To let something bother you. A meaning. To allow a minor issue to affect your mood or emotions. Example. Don't let a small mistake bother you. Just try again. Longing for company and activity. A meaning. Feeling lonely and wanting to be around people or engaged in something. Example. After months of working from home, she was longing for company and activity. Obsessed with something. A meaning. To think about something all the time, often in an unhealthy way. Example. She became obsessed with checking her phone every few minutes. Stared at it for too long. A meaning. To look at something intensely for an extended period. Example. He stared at the painting for too long and started seeing patterns that weren't really there. Seeing shapes in the patterns. A meaning. Imagining things that aren't really there due to perception. Example. After looking at the clouds for a while, she started seeing shapes in the patterns. Growing restless. A meaning. Becoming more and more uneasy or impatient. Example. The students grew restless as the lecture dragged on. Stopping sleeping at night. A meaning. Losing the ability to sleep well. Example. Ever since the baby was born, she stopped sleeping at night. Desperate to set the woman free. A meaning. Extremely eager to help or release someone. Example. The activists were desperate to set the captured animals free. John was away. A meaning. John was not at home, he was somewhere else. Example. Since John was away on a business trip, she had the house to herself. He stood frozen in shock. A meaning. He was so surprised or scared that he couldn't move. Example. When she saw the unexpected guest at the door, she stood frozen in shock, looking at him with wild eyes. A meaning. Staring at someone with an intense, almost crazy expression. Example. The lost hiker looked at the rescuers with wild eyes, relieved but exhausted. Right in her path. A meaning. Directly in front of where she was going. Example. He dropped his bag right in her path, making her trip over it. Kept crawling. A meaning. Continued moving forward, often in a slow or weak way. Example. Even though he was tired, he kept crawling toward the finish line.